Are you ready for some smart, plain talk on politics, Israel, and the law? It's the Andrew Parker Show. Let's roll. Welcome to another episode of the Andrew Parker Show. How are you? Thank you for joining us. We talk politics, Israel, and the law every episode. And today, I'd like to share my thoughts on two topics that really don't go together, but they're both bothering me. One is education and decisions we're making regarding educating our children, how we educate them, the standards we apply, the curriculum, and what we provide in our discourse in education as truth. Who are we turning out into society after they get through K through 12 and some would say worse yet, the institutions of higher learning? Yes, completing college. What chance do they have once they've gone through our remarkable education system? So I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about the response that we have as a society to death, to different deaths. And why do you think we have such a different response? Well, maybe the response matches the heinous nature of the death, the difficult nature. Maybe it's the person who dies that results in such an enormous outcry, possibly, from our society. Why is the outcry quiet in some cases and silent and non-existent versus causing an entire upheaval from coast to coast? It's telling, really. So let's first talk about education. I'm bothered. I'm bothered by the fact that our education system has become so political. It has become politically divisive. It has been driven by politics and political people. For many, many years, the education unions across the country have become not apolitical, but uber-political, in full-throated support of the left. And it has seeped not just into the politics of labor unions, but into the classroom. And this was not always the case, but it certainly is today, where 95 or more % of teachers who are teaching our kids have not just a personal political position that they hold, which certainly every person has a right to, but a virulent, hard left attitude on the political spectrum toward liberal and uber-liberal, woke, leftist even positions that they bring into the classroom, that they infuse into the curriculum and into their discussions with kids. And we're seeing it across the country, starting with the national union that drives this, but down to the individual teacher in suburbia in the classroom. And so what does that yield? What does that result in? Well, with the malleable minds of the youth that they are teaching, it has a monumental impact. These are things that these kids will believe potentially for the rest of their lives. And many of these things are patently and blatantly false. Now, these teachers legitimately believe them and want to infuse their students in what they believe to be truth and justice. But a lot of what they're teaching is identity politics to kids. They are teaching things that are contrary, certainly to religious belief in the public schools, which many say church and state separation, that's good, that's right. But that space then is filled with ideas like there are not two sexes, there are many more than that, and there is this whole gradation, if you will, of masculine and feminine genes, DNA, and the impacts that it has on people. It's kind of a sliding scale, if you will. Well, am I male or female? Well, I'm somewhere in between. I'm neither of those. I am binary. I'm somewhere in between. Some days I'm one way, some days I'm another. And this is being taught. Now, there are many people that believe that that is what should be taught, and we need to reacclimate ourselves to a new science. And they wrap themselves in science and claim that this is part of science. There are many others, though, and I would say the vast majority, maybe on an 80-20 split even, who say there's biological men and there are biological women, and that's what it is. Now, I'm not pressing a position on this subject. I am saying that it is being taught regularly. And what is also being taught is the Barack Obama identity politics world. He is the one who put identity politics on steroids and pressed it hard. And many on the left continue to do so. What do I mean by identity politics? Well, what I mean is if you see someone, you identify them as being a part of this or that group. And this or that group have a series of characteristics or traits that everyone in that group has. So, if you're a white male, you have a series of characteristics or traits that are applied to you, including in particular white privilege. In fact, anyone who's white has white privilege, but particularly the white male. And what's worse with white privilege is if you're Jewish and white, you're one of the worst of the white privileged. And, all of the other groups can be identified through what they look like. And those people, therefore, have different, different characteristics or traits. So if you're black, you're in that group. If you're Asian, you're in that group. If you're Hispanic, you're in that group. And you've got different characteristics and traits. To the point where we need to separate these groups and have affinity groups that meet together and separately. And this identity politics tells you, well, you're part of that group, so that means you vote this way. And by the way, if you vote a different way, that means, you are a token bigot against that group. So like a Clarence Thomas, for example, he's an Uncle Tom because he's conservative and he's black. I mean, you can't have that. So when we have this identity politics that is being taught in the classroom, not the way I've described it, but it effectively is being enhanced, promoted with students. It's being promoted. Well, no, you're Johnny. You're with that group over there. And kids learn this, and it creates division. Now, I am going to get objection from those on the left, from liberals and particularly teachers saying we absolutely do not do that. We, in fact, do the opposite. We like the white kids to play with the black kids, and we integrate everybody, and, that's a big watchword for what we have. But the groups are the groups, and they separate in that way, and they are discussed in that way. And you see it when they interact. And so while the teachers may believe, or the curriculum and the manner in which public education K-12 works, believes that it is being a promoter of integration and avoiding separation and division, really it's the opposite. And it's disturbing. And then these kids go to college and they get cemented in their views. And many of the views that they are taught K-12 and then in college are very anti-American. In fact, we are the problem in the world. We are not a solution. Our type of system, capitalist system, a system of freedom and liberty, a system of democracy, of self-selection in terms of our leaders, our elected officials, has yielded problems around the world, and primarily from our colonialist attitudes. And what happens to society when year in, year out, we are graduating kids who believe this? Well, in a lot of respects, you get college protests, anger, and hatred toward your fellow. And that's a big problem. And we're seeing it. And we have seen it over the last many years. And unfortunately, Donald Trump is the perfect foil for this because he gets all of those on the left so charged up. And our enemies around the world love it. And we're going to do an episode coming up on Qatar, who spends billions of dollars to undermine the United States of America. China, whose focus is almost exclusively to undermine America and different ways to do it. They have buildings filled with people who are coders and who sit in their cubicles to find ways to hack into U.S. computer systems. And by the way, just to remind everyone, we count our votes with computers and computer systems. And they're sitting over there all day long trying to figure out how to hack into, well, it's quite easy into our election systems. But, I'm not alleging that any election was stolen or fraudulent right now on this show, but I just think, is that a good idea? It doesn't seem like a good idea. It just doesn't seem like it's a good idea for anyone to be counting their votes that way. Anyway, the undermining of the U.S., it really starts with digging at the underbelly of our society and then combining it with an educated youth who have been sent out into the world by the public education unions and these liberal left teachers and our system. And I believe in a liberal education, personally. I think it's very important. I'm talking about liberal arts here. But when it gets into the politics that it so often does, unfortunately, creates a real problem. And that's how we get to where we are at today. That's how Minnesota goes from one of the consistently year in, year out best places to live anywhere in the country to being on fire and being the laughingstock of the country. And it isn't so funny either in terms of fraud. By the way, as it relates to fraud, one sentence. How could billions of dollars disappear and nobody know? Well, it's because that's government failure. That is why we don't entrust the government with, and we shouldn't. We do, but we shouldn't entrust the government with such enormous programs. They are not well delivered. Enormous waste and inefficiency, but worse, blatant outright fraud. And the government ignores it because it's not their money. They don't treat it like the most important thing for oversight. They would if it were their money. Certainly. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you a business owner? Are you losing sleep because you feel your partner isn't carrying their weight, or because you no longer share the same vision or values? Are you no longer comfortable going into your own office? Are you walking on eggshells in the company you built? This is Chris Daniels, founding partner of Parker Daniels Keyboard LLC, a premier litigation law firm headquartered in downtown Minneapolis. For more than 30 years, I've specialized in business litigation and have helped hundreds of business owners resolve troubling business disputes. As a former certified public accountant, I get to the heart of the dispute, including financial issues. Business divorce can be messy, time-consuming, and costly, but doing nothing can cost you a lot more. Not just money, but emotionally, physically, and in your personal life. If you and your business partner no longer see eye to eye and you're eager to take a proactive approach and make a change, please call me at 612-355-4100 and schedule a consultation. Or visit our website at www.parkerdk.com.
Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you. Let me talk for a minute about death. And what I'm really referring to here is I look at any death is a grievous incident, even if the person was horrible, a horrible person. But if you compare the death of a great saint, Mother Teresa or someone like this, to let's say a drug dealer who, through his acts, have killed thousands of kids, teenagers, young adults. And that person dies in a drug shootout or something. Are those two deaths the same? And should they be the same? I raised the question. Alex Preddy, the ICU nurse, who on liberal news stations is referred to as this calm, wonderful bedside manner ICU nurse, who gets shot in cold blood by these Gestapo federal law enforcement agents. And then you go to another channel, another station, and they're showing the video of this guy spitting on federal law enforcement and kicking out their rear light and blinker system with his foot, viciously kicking at the car, and then resisting arrest aggressively. Could that be the same person? Well, in any event, depending on, who this person is, or it appears to be it is the same person. It appears to have different conduct depending on what he's doing, if you can believe that he is a very calm and respected ICU nurse. But when he dies, it results in an enormous outcry. And it seems to me that makes sense because he was killed by law enforcement who, the claim is, abused their authority in using excessive force that they did not need to use, and that is deathly force. So that's the debate. And are they using Preddy's death to advance political positions? You'd have to be living under a rock to think otherwise. Both sides, all sides, are doing that. That's why they're using this death. But people don't seem to care about the 5 or 6 or 7 black kids in Chicago each weekend during the summer that regularly are shot while playing in their front yard or even in the living room of their house. Or the teenagers in black communities there, or other communities. Nobody really talks about them. There is other than their family and small community, there's no national outcry. Well, that's different. The context of it, the politics, the fact that this happened with George Floyd, and I don't know. Some people are reporting he wasn't such a good guy, but that doesn't matter, as I just talked about. What does matter is a police officer killed him. Now, rather, again, than burning down buildings and taking the law into your own hands and looting and destroying businesses to the tune of billions of dollars, let's bring the law enforcement agent to justice and convict them through a judicial system without breaking the law day in and day out with arson, with killing others, and with property damage in the billions. And I would think that leaders in communities, in states, nationally even, should be requiring that. We follow the law. And when horrific things happen, we bring people to justice. That's how we do it. And when that's not being done, it's not appropriate for our elected officials to take to the camera and the microphone and tell people to go destroy. No, you tell people we're going to bring him to justice. And by the way, if there is a system that is unjust, we are going to, through our elected officials, change that system. That's how you do it in a civilized society. You don't do it by ignoring the law, which is why it is so important that what Donald Trump is doing in terms of closing the border, following our law, not allowing for people to take the law into their own hands, ignore it by allowing criminal, illegal immigrants to continue to stay here and be here. Worse yet, to vote. That's a digression that I'm not going to go down right now. And I just it makes it difficult to challenge the Trump administration's position. Now, be clear. I'm not putting a period there. Be clear that how the administration carries out its action is important, very important. And there have been some serious incidents that should cause an outcry and should be fully investigated to determine what precisely happened, because everybody thinks they know, and that it's indisputable. Both sides claim it's indisputable. But the fact is it's disputable. So I just think that any death is grievous, it causes grief, and should be, life should be revered. But it has to be put into context as well. And I just wonder why it is that some of these incidents, some of these people are canonized when others are not. And these are both human lives that are lost. Certainly, there is a difference between the death of Hitler and the death of Mother Teresa. And you should think about how society responds to various such incidents. The person who is killed by the drunk driver, that should have never happened. It is avoidable, and it's horrific. They're alive one minute, they're gone the next because of a drunk driver. Same with respect to someone who takes fentanyl. And even worse, they didn't even know. Is it worse? I mean, I don't know. Those deaths versus, say, the death of George Floyd. Same? Different? One has value, the other doesn't? Well, the kid that died of fentanyl, there's hundreds of thousands. He's just a number. He's not even referred to. There's no national news coverage for him. But there is for George Floyd. So consider, why is that? Well, because he's a symbol, right? I don't know. He's a symbol of the struggle of blacks in this country. Is that what it is? Well, why isn't there a huge outcry when a black child gets shot in the front yard playing by a drive-by shooter or in their living room? Nobody even hears about it. There's no national news. There's nothing. I don't know. That's what I got for you today. Yeah, those are my thoughts. We are going to have in the next few days the head of the Upper Midwest Law Center, Doug Seaton, joining us on the Andrew Parker Show. And it's going to be very interesting. We're going to talk about the law and recent big cases that are at the Minnesota Supreme Court. We'll see how the court rules. I will tell you that the judicial branch, the judiciary in the state of Minnesota has changed greatly over the last 10, 15 years. The Minnesota Supreme Court is now all liberal, appointed by Democrats, but liberal justices. And the federal district court is not entirely appointed by Democrats, but almost now. It was quite a bit different before. And not that, if you're appointed by a Democrat, you're going to rule one way, and if you're appointed by a Republican, you're going to rule another way. I don't believe that. But there are different ways of looking at the law and cases that are interesting that the judges on the federal district court today versus 10, 15 years ago, I think some would say there are differences. So it's interesting as the ebb and flow of Minnesota politics arise. And it looks like, since Amy Klobuchar is running for governor, she will likely win, and we will continue since 2006 to have Democratic rule in the state of Minnesota. Things haven't gone so great. No, they have not. But we keep re-electing the same party. Go to theandrewparkershow.com, theandrewparkershow.com, all one word, theandrewparkershow.com, and follow us, subscribe, make sure you subscribe, and like us, follow us on YouTube for sure, and it's great to having been with you for yet another episode. And until next time, be kind to your neighbor. For more Smart Plain Talk, go to theandrewparkershow.com. Learn about all of your listening and viewing options. And remember, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. This episode of The Andrew Parker Show is sponsored by Parker Daniels Keyboard and True North Private Investments. Mark Twain once quipped, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. When you are lied about and it spreads, the resulting mayhem and destruction can be, and often is, disastrous." Hi, this is Andrew Parker, co-founder of the Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm. I recently handled a high-profile defamation lawsuit on behalf of a luxury home real estate agent whose business was decimated by falsehoods spread about him. After nearly 2 years of litigation and 2 weeks of trial, the jury came back with a verdict of more than $2 million for our client. Parker Daniels Keyboard. We litigate cases, we try cases, and we win cases. With a record of excellence in achieving extraordinary results, Parker Daniels Keyboard lawyers have consistently won huge verdicts for its clients in the areas of defamation, civil rights violations, regulatory battles, and intellectual property theft. For wise counsel and winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard, premier law firm in downtown Minneapolis. Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you.